Good morning guys and welcome back to Barham Engines. Let's get out in the workshop and get that Jag built up. So we've got the rocker cover off the Cosworth. As you can see, we've got a breather pipe at the back here which is welded in. So obviously we can't remove that. So rather than face it over on the head refacer over there, we're having to do it with our 32mm diameter tool. So you can see that's about, I think we put about a 5 thou cut on there and it is clearing. We're not going to paint this because the customer hasn't painted it long ago and it's, you know, that's the colour he wants it. So I think it's just the top here looked a little bit corroded. You can see by this bit here what it looked like, so it just looked a little bit grotty, so we're just going to clear it up, make it look nice and fresh, and then maybe get one of our little Barham engine stickers over there, just finish it off. I quite like doing this actually, it's just something a bit therapeutic about it. I think it's that instant sort of freshness look once you've done it. A bit sad, but so first on the agenda is the V8 Jag. I've got all the com rods here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean them one by one. So I've cleaned this one, we've got all the bits here, so we've got the bearings and the pistons. It's quite easy to get confused with the V8 assembly because of the way the rods are, so I'm just going to clean them one by one, fit the pistons. Sorry it's a bit noisy guys, we've got Paul Dove in today and he's out there cleaning some V8 Range Rover bits. But here we go, you see we've got the rods all cleaned, got a nice little clean area here, many of you will be pleased to know. We've got the big end shells here, they're all the same size, they're all colour coded in this V8, but fortunately when I looked at all the numbers everything's blue, so which makes it nice and easy. So we've got a load of blue big end shells here, load of blue main shells there, so I'm just going to get these laid out, get all the big end shells in the rods, we'll get the pistons on. So here's the new piston. As you can see on the crown, I've compared them to the old ones just to make sure, because obviously like I said before, we never assume anything in this game. You've got a little arrow up here which faces over to the left, so that means that faces forward, and I did double check with the old ones. So the way we put these on the rods is the arrow forward to the left, and then those stamp marks at the other side, they go to the left as well, and that's how they go on. They're not handed, so these can go on any rod. So we're just going to get these on now, and then we're going to install them down the holes of the block. So next step, we've oiled all the bores, give them a nice coat of oil. We've got the bearings in the com rod on this one, give them a very light oiling, not on the back face, remember it's got to be completely dry in between the rod and the bearing. And we've got the piston on the rod. Got to be extra careful that we make sure that both circlips are in the grooves. They might click in, but sometimes you find that the pin is that little bit long where they don't sort of push back, they don't clip back themselves, so you've got to make sure that those circlips are pushed back into the grooves. We've spaced the rings out, so each ring we've pushed around about a third of the way round. Now we're going to get the ring clamp on and get one down the hole. So this is number 8. Right, so we've turned the block upside down, you can see all the pistons are in now. Everything's gone in nice and smoothly. So what we're going to do now is put the main shells in the block, and we're going to put the crank in. John's polished the crank today. We've got a good clean and a blowout, so that is ready to go in. Just take the shell like that, put it in put the tag end in, just a couple of mil lower than the block. Push down this end until it's smooth on both edges. Thrusts in there, just a little drop of oil in each one. We just rub that, give it a nice coating in each bearing. So the crank's in, we've just put all the big ends on, Now bear in mind, we're still waiting for the bolts. So these are the old bolts I've just put in sort of loosely, really, just to keep it all intact. And the same on the mains. We're replacing all the main 10 bolts there. So we're just waiting for those to come. So we've just got the bearings in here. Just going to stick a bit of oil on those and get all this in and nipped up. Right guys, we have got two subjects to catch up on. We've got the one we did in the last video about the car at the main dealers. So we're going to be telling you a little bit more about that. And we've also got the cylinder head that we got the garage to do some subcontract warranty work for, that sent us a bill that we thought was fairly extortionate. So we'll start off with that one. Now what I've done is I've read through the comments when I did the video, and I have took on board a lot of what you guys say. There's obviously some guys there that are familiar with this sort of thing on disputes and what have you. So what I've done, the first thing I've done is I've asked the company for an itemised bill, which I haven't actually got yet. So I want to get an itemised bill showing exactly what they've done, their hourly rate, you know, just itemise exactly whether there was any parts or anything like that, just so we're clear on what they're charging me for. And secondly, I have had two different quotes. Now weirdly, I've had a guy ring me up and ask me for a quote on doing a head gasket job and a cylinder head on the same vehicle as this. I've rang two different garages, local garages, they're customers of ours anyway, so I've asked them to give me a quote on doing a head gasket on this specific vehicle, and they've both come back with similar sort of prices. I said, listen, we'll go through the cylinder head, which is what we did on that vehicle. I want you to take the head off. I want you to take the front cover off, replace the timing chain. We'll supply the parts, you supply the water pump, so do a water pump as well, and then put the vehicle on, obviously oils, filters, etc. They've both come back, including VAT, just over £1,100. So that's about, they said that's about 14 hours on the book, and then a little bit more obviously to do the water pump, and then you've got parts and what have you. So 14 hours, all £50 an hour, the same as this other company. So even at a little bit more, even if we say 20 hours, that's £1,000 plus the VAT. So they're both saying the same thing. Bearing in mind that this company charged us 33 hours at £50 an hour. So I'm just going to wait for them to get back with the itemised bill, and then I'm going to dispute it. And I'm more than likely going to write them an email or a letter just stating what I'm willing to pay for, and why I think I should pay for that. To be honest, I'm even willing to go up to about 25 hours on it, but 33 I just think is extortionate. I mean, I know it's only a sort of matter of £300 or £400, but it's £300 or £400. And as a lot of you guys said in the comments, the fact that before I've even spoke to him about it on the phone, he's rang up and said that he'd take £300 off because really that's to do with the customer, then it just goes to show their original bill. Their original bill was getting on £2,000 plus the VAT. Absolutely ridiculous. You know, he's charging me double basically. So I suspect what he's charging me for is to do the actual job, to take the head off, to put the head on, the fiddle about with the timing cover, whatever they did, and then to stand there, two of them scratching their heads on how to figure out how to do the timing setup. I can't think of any other reason why, to be honest with you. It's not like they've had to have even changed the oil, because the oil's all fresh sitting in the sump. So I think that's what I'm going to do, guys. I'm going to take your advice. I'm going to do it properly. Just make sure I get this itemised bill and go from there. So that's the first one. Right, secondly, this car that I spoke to you about in the last video. Now, just after I did the video, I actually had a technician from this dealership come in here. He came in here to ask me about his own engine that he wanted to bring in, and he watched the video, and he's probably going to be watching this video. But he knew straight away that vehicle was what I was on about. So basically, he sort of told me the story about it, and apparently, by the sounds of it, This walnut blasting is a sort of relatively new thing. It's what they do in-house. So they've diagnosed an issue. Apparently, he said the reason they walnut blasted it is because you can get sort of coke build up behind the valves or whatever, and it could cause sort of rough idling. But this wasn't that. It was a misfire at idle. So really, they wrongly diagnosed it and then did the walnut blasting, which they didn't have to do. And I think all that bill was about £800, something like that. So he did suggest that he's had a talk with his boss and maybe they're going to refund him for that. But I then had the customer come in this morning and he did bring in the quotes that they gave him for me to have a look at. And it seemed you got the one for the walnut blasting, whatever, they're going to refund him for that, he said. So that's good news. They give him two quotes on engines. One was for about £5,500. And I said to him, plus the VAT mind, I said, that's not too bad if it's a genuine sort of engine, with a load of stuff on it maybe. But it did have £1,000-odd surcharge with it, which was odd, because I thought if it's got a surcharge with it, it maybe is a recondition. So where they're getting that from, I don't know. But so I would say that for that off a main dealer is probably a tall bare engine and there's an exchange on your unit. So they're probably getting it from a reconditioners. I don't know. I said the only problem is with that is your car really is, from what I can see, is probably generously is worth £4,500. It's a 60 plate with 86,000 mile on it, I think. So it's not really an option. You may as well just go and buy another one unless the car's got some sentimental value. The next quote they give him was for about 4,200, and that was to rebuild his own unit. Now, from what I can see, that was labour, obviously the work they've done already, and the parts, so pistons and bearings and gaskets, etc. But there was no mention of any machining or whatever. So I said, you've got to be a bit careful with this because, and don't hold me to it because I may have misread the invoice, the quote, but it looked to me like they were the £4,200 plus the VAT was for buying all these parts, putting them in this engine, and then building it back up. I said, firstly, just by looking at the state of that piston, this is beyond a rebuild. They're going to be rebuilding this and probably invoicing it as a rebuild, and rebuild can really cover their ass. I said, but the problem you got is, just from looking at that piston, that engine is no good. The block needs reboring and refacing, and the head needs going through. It's got extremely hot. So there's no good sticking new pistons in them bores, no chance. He said, well, what do you suggest I do? I said, well, even paying that at 4.2, you've got three options. You do the first one and put a recon motor in it, and the whole job is going to end up costing you way more than the car's worth. You do the second one, they rebuild it, just chuck in a load of new bits, hope it's all right, still going to cost you more than what the car's worth. Or you cut your losses and get rid of the car. I said to him, the trouble is, for us to get involved with it, we can't do half a job. We're going to have to do the engine properly. If we would buy it off you, but we ain't going to give you much for it, because by the time, even though our labour seems free, it's not free because we're up to our eyeballs in it. We've still got to spend time doing it. We're still going to have to buy parts, which are going to be about £1,000 to us, maybe a bit more. Then there's the time, and then to sell it and make any money on it, by the time you've talked VAT and all the rest of it, it's hardly worth us doing. So we really couldn't give you much for it. So he's gone away, he's going to have a think and see what happens. But yeah, we go through this daily with people on the phone, and they got a car, once they've had a problem with the engine, almost better to cut their losses really, or even doing it, there's not much in it at the end of it. So yeah, shame for him, feel sorry for him, but it's one of those guys. Have a lovely bank holiday weekend, and we'll see you next week. Subscribe, hit that notification bell. Cheers guys.